Alright guys, I'm about to do the unspeakable. I'm going to take my mask off in public. It's kind of scary to think about, but I just need to do this because I'm just tired of wearing this thing. Alright guys, here we go. Wow, it feels so liberating, and it actually wasn't that bad. Oh, no thanks. I already have one. I'm just not wearing it right now. Thanks though. Alright guys, it's time we had a chat. A chat about something that everyone is afraid to talk about. That's right, it's masks, and when it's actually okay to take them off when you're in Japan. And with Japan opening in just a week, I've been getting dozens of people asking me what the mask situation is actually like in Japan. And here's the truth, there is actually a good balance between when you should and shouldn't wear your mask while you're in public in Japan. It is possible to take your mask off while in public and still be respectful. Just take a look at all these people in public that aren't wearing one. And with COVID becoming less of a problem, I'm beginning to see more and more Japanese people not wearing masks in public. So as someone that's lived here during the height of COVID, I will give you the actual social rules of when you should or shouldn't wear your mask. I will break it down into 3 categories, starting with when you should always wear your mask, when you only have to wear your mask at certain times, and lastly, when you don't have to wear your mask at all. Alright, now let's get to it before I get more people throwing masks at me. In order to understand how Japan established what is socially acceptable, we must first look at what the official guidance is from the government. According to Japan's Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare Department, the rules for the outdoors is as follows. While talking, you may take off your mask if you're a sufficient distance from others, which is defined as 2 meters apart. If you aren't 2 meters away, you must be wearing a mask when you are talking. Wow, that's pretty strict. But if you aren't talking outdoors, there is no need for a mask at any time. The pamphlet continues, stating that while you're indoors, you must wear your mask at all times. If you aren't talking, you may take your mask off, but if you're closer than 2 meters to someone, you must wear your mask regardless. In the bottom right corner, it briefly mentions you must wear a mask at all times in public transit. And then for bars and restaurants, officially, you must wear your mask when you are not eating. So that means in between every time you're not eating, you must re-don your mask. It also officially states you must keep your voice down when talking indoors in public restaurants. Also, quick side note, kids from 6 to 18 generally follow the same rules, and 5 and under do not need to wear a mask. The indoor and restaurant topics are the most interesting to discuss, which I will get to very soon. But now that we understand all of the official requirements that the government is asking of people, let's see how much all this lines up with reality and start talking about what people are actually doing in their everyday life. For starters, let's talk about the more straightforward topic, which is when it's best to just always wear your mask. So for public transportation like taxis, buses, trains, subway stations, along with other places like shopping malls, hotels, and airports, this part of the pamphlet is actually pretty spot on to what Japanese society actually practices. You will see almost everyone wearing a mask at all times in these areas. The only times you'd see someone take off their mask is if they were going to eat or drink something. So before you enter one of these areas, make sure you put your mask on and then you can head on in. But using common sense, if the train, bus, or any of these areas are really empty, feel free to take off your mask and get a breath of fresh air. However, as you approach a crowded area again, or as the train begins to fill up, it's best to put the mask back on. Alright, now that we've covered the most straightforward part of mask wearing, let's move on to the next area that isn't so black and white. For these areas, we'll call them semi-mask situations. This is where mask wearing is kind of optional for the following places. The places where this applies is at bars, restaurants, and special events or festivals. But Alex, you can't do that. The pamphlet said you must wear your mask at all times. Yeah, that's what the pamphlet might have said, but it's definitely not what's been put into practice. For bars and restaurants, it's pretty easy. When you first arrive, they will expect you to have your mask on during the whole initial interaction. Once they take you to your table and your group sits down, you can then take off your mask. The rest of the time you're at the bar or restaurant, you can keep your mask off as you chat with your friends that are around you. The only time you really have to put it back on is when you go to the bathroom, or if you call the waiter over to make an order. Even then, all you need to do is feel out the restaurant and the environment. If the waiter doesn't have a mask on and approaches you no problem, then you can do the same. I've found that small or local bars, restaurants, izakayas, or yakitori stands tend to be a lot more relaxed about the whole mask thing. I just want to let you know in case that affects your decision making for where you want to eat or drink. And finally, at festivals or special events, it really does depend on the festival and what the type of vibe is. For example, the Oktoberfest event that I went to was very relaxed lax with their COVID rules. There were dozens of Japanese people that were walking around with no mask on, and many approached me to share drinks together. I say all that to say this: use your common sense to gauge what the environment is like for mask wearing. Also, the later you stay out at a bar or restaurant, the rules tend to gradually get more relaxed. Again, just use common sense and observe your surroundings before you decide to relax that mask. I will share my thoughts on the mask wearing and COVID policies at the end, but next let's talk about the easiest subject: when you don't have to wear masks at all. And now for the part where you can go mask free. As the pamphlet suggests, if you're outdoors and far enough away from people, you can keep your mask off even while talking. Japanese people have been 50-50 on wearing a mask even if they're far away from people. I really feel like they just keep the mask on because they're used to it. I have gotten used to it myself, and sometimes I find myself still wearing my mask even after I get home. Anyways, if you're with your friends outside, it'll be okay even if you're talking in proximity of each other, just as long as you aren't super close to other strangers. The only time you really need to consider wearing a mask outside is if you're gonna go to an outdoor day festival, depending on what kind it is, and see yourself about to get shoulder to shoulder with a bunch of strangers. But like I said before, it all depends on the event and what everyone else is doing. Now it's time for some observations I made about mask wearing in Japan, and where I think it's headed. Over the past year, I've observed mask wearing gradually become less and less common. This is especially true if you go to certain areas, like bars, izakayas, restaurants, yakitori stands, and many other examples. It also seems like as the day transitions into nighttime, I feel the mask wearing eases even further. Also, I do think that in a year's time, the mask wearing will drastically decrease, especially if there aren't any more severe COVID strains that surface. My final parting advice would be this: just feel out your environment and use common sense. Going with the flow of what everyone else is doing is the easiest way to keep people from staring at you. Spoiler alert, you're gonna get stared at anyways because you're a foreigner. I mean, what? But even if I have lived here from the height of COVID till now, that is just my observation. Now that you've heard it from me, let me know what you think about the mask situation in the comments below. Like the video to make more people aware of what mask wearing is like in Japan, and subscribe for more Japan content. Well, until next time, I'll see you then.